Slam Time, Wrestle Talk with Attitude. Hosted by yours truly, Big Rob. Yo, what's going on, everyone? As always, I'm your man, Big Rob. Welcome to Slam Time Wrestle Talk with Attitude. Come to you live from the beautiful Jersey Shore. Well, today we have a ton of rain, so that makes it the perfect day to sit back, relax, watch Worlds Collide, watch Money in the Bank. So let's go. Money in the Bank predictions. Lock it in, baby. All right, guys. So listen, I'm not going to do a full SmackDown review because I want to get into Money in the Bank and Money in the Bank predictions. But, man, where's that John Cena been this whole run? The fire, the heel work. He did a great job last night. When he was talking about not being able to handle the truth. That line by John Cena was so slick. He knew exactly what he was doing. When he said that line, he knew exactly how the audience was going to react to him. That's why John Cena is one of the best to ever do it. Then he was, the crowd. We want truth. You can't handle the truth. Great stuff from John Cena. I'm telling you, man, whether you like it or not, the WWE sees Logan Paul as a big-time player. The guy's excellent in the ring. Forget everything he does outside the ring. Forget how he got his jump, how he started. That guy has turned into a great professional wrestler. And just by him standing there next to John Cena validates my point that the WWE sees him as a top guy, which he is. But a little more with SmackDown. Like I said, I'm not going to do a whole review. A couple things that I thought were interesting. That opening segment, man. Jacob Fatu, Braun Breaker. That is going to main event WrestleMania. Maybe not just 1 year, but multiple years. I see that being the Austin Rock of this new era moving forward. And I can see them main eventing WrestleMania 1, 2, 3 times, man. Sign me up. It's electric when those two guys are face to face. Every interaction they've had with each other has been, spine chilling. Great stuff there. Can't wait to see, how that progresses, in the future. But we have Rollins out there, with his crew of Bronson Reed, Braun Breaker, Paul Heyman, running roughshod over the whole show. Anyone, in the Money in the Bank tonight, they beat down. So that kind of gives us some clues of what they're doing for the show. He talked about Roman Reigns not being there. He's on the island of irrelevancy. That tells you that we are probably going to get a Roman Reigns appearance tonight. I'm all for it. The other interesting thing from SmackDown last night was the progression of the breakdown between the new bloodline, Solo Sikoa and Jacob Fatu. We had Solo Sikoa back there talking to, JC Mateo about Fatu, how he's not very smart, all breaks, very little brains, and then we get the shot when they walk out of the screen of Jacob Fatu walking in, clearly hearing everything they said. So we're progressing that further down the line. Possibly, at Night of Champions, maybe we see a U.S. title match between Solo Sikoa and Jacob Fatu, because I think the plan, and I think the best thing to really elevate Fatu at SummerSlam would be either Damian Priest or Drew McIntyre. I think that's where you want to get him on a big show like that. The other big announcement coming out of SmackDown last night, that on June 28th in Saudi Arabia at Night of Champions, the King and Queen of the Ring tournament is returning. And the winner of those tournaments will receive a title shot at SummerSlam. So once I heard that, it altered my prediction for Money in the Bank, which we'll get into. But I love the fact that they're making that show, Night of Champions, meaningful. This tournament gives it meaning. It progresses storylines, and it gives us a clear picture of what's going to happen at SummerSlam. Good stuff there. Something else that caught my attention, obviously I spoke about this a couple weeks on Twitter. X, follow me, Big Rob NJ if you don't. It's only a matter of time before Julia is the Women's United States Champion. Zelina Vega, transition champion, giving her a little run with the title here as a thank you for the years of service. But Julia is going to have that title. I could see Julia winning that title, moving into a program that goes into SummerSlam against Jordan Grace. Great showcase for those two girls on a big stage. Excited about that. Julia is a big player. Obviously, she has a ton of backing within the company. That's been reported. She's a big deal. As far as the women's match last night on SmackDown, man, future women's championship match at WrestleMania is Roxanne Perez versus Rhea Ripley. The one spot in that match that I thought was unbelievable was when Rhea Ripley went for Riptide on Roxanne Perez and she turned it into the DDT. Very smooth. Roxanne's a great worker for a girl her age, being that smooth in the ring. That girl has superstar written all over her. I'm super excited to see where she goes. Don't know if she wins the Money in the Bank. We'll get into that. But yeah, that girl, that's a future main event at WrestleMania. Rhea Ripley, Roxanne Perez. Give me more. Feed me more, in the words of Ryback. Let's go. All right, guys, with that, like I said, I wanted to do a little rundown of SmackDown, what I thought was interesting coming out of that show. Let's get into Money in the Bank predictions. We have 4 matches on the card. They should be excellent. I love, I see a lot of, back and forth on X about, we need more cards on the, we need more matches on the card. I don't agree with that. I think, by having a minimal amount of matches allows for these matches to fully transpire, gives them more time, allow the pro wrestlers, allow, the people in that match to tell a better story. All right, so, with that, let's get into the Money in the Bank predictions. Let's go. All right, guys, so I'm going to go through my predictions for Money in the Bank. I'm just going to start, this isn't what I think is, the match order. The first match I'm going to get into and break down is the Women's Intercontinental Championship match between Becky Lynch, the challenger, versus the champion, Lyra Valkyria. Right now, Lyra has a victory over her at Backlash, where she retained the Intercontinental Championship. My prediction for tonight is that Becky Lynch wins the Intercontinental Championship and Lyra Valkyria is forced to raise her hand. Obviously, the stipulation was that if Becky lost, she'd never, challenge for that title again. And Lyra, if she, loses, has to raise Becky's hand. So I see Becky Lynch winning the match tonight, but I actually think we get 2 more matches out of this. So once Becky wins tonight, they're even up. 1 for Lyra at Backlash, 1 for Becky at Money in the Bank. That brings us to Night of Champions, where I think Becky retains that title in an Intercontinental Championship match, but I think she retains it in a slimy way where, she beats Lyra, but it's not conclusive, or she takes the easy way out as a heel, wins the match, which leads us to a 4th match at SummerSlam. And I actually think this is where Lyra goes over and becomes the star that she is. Girl's phenomenal professional wrestler. Took a little bit of time to get her up and rolling, but she's really showcasing that she's a great women's wrestler, deserves a top spot within that company. But I see the match at SummerSlam being the final of a 4-part series. I see it being in a steel cage match, or who knows, maybe even a Hell in a Cell match for a final blow-off. I see Becky doing the honors for her at SummerSlam. Really puts Lyra over. Lyra's been growing on the microphone, battling with Becky. I've been a Becky hater for years now. I think she is very cringe when she, speaks, but I will say, and I will give her credit, I think she's done a great job of elevating Lyra. So tonight at Money in the Bank, I see Lyra losing the Intercontinental Championship to Becky Lynch. She is forced to raise, Becky's hand. We get a rematch at Night of Champions. Becky wins in a weird way, a heel way, which puts us at a 4th match at SummerSlam inside a Hell in a Cell or a steel cage match where, we get a conclusive ending to this feud. Lyra is now a superstar. Becky did, helped elevate her and did her job as a 4-horsewoman looking to get the next generation of women over. So Becky Lynch wins the Intercontinental Championship tonight. All right, guys, so the next match on the card that I'm going to talk about is the Women's Money in the Bank ladder match, which is Alexa Bliss versus Roxanne Perez versus Rhea Ripley versus Julia versus Naomi versus Stephanie Vacour. So I think we get a lot of story coming out of this match, a lot of program setting us up for SummerSlam, and a lot of good stuff. So I think right off the bat, I think Naomi wins the Money in the Bank contract, and she goes on to challenge Tiffany Stratton at SummerSlam. I think that's the SummerSlam match. But with that, there's a lot of different things that are brewing here. So the one thing, we've gotten a lot of interaction on TV. We didn't get anything last night, but we got interaction between Alexa Bliss and Charlotte Flair. I could very easily see a situation where they team up and take on Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez at SummerSlam for the women's championship, women's tag team championship, and go on to win those titles and elevate those titles. But keep in the back of your mind, at some point here, we're going to get Asuka returning. So it'll be interesting to see, where she plays into things. I think in this match, I think Roxanne Perez and I think Rhea Ripley cost each other the match. I think that's a feud that we're going to get going into SummerSlam. I know I mentioned that's a WrestleMania main event at some point down the road, but not this year. I think that's a program we get at SummerSlam. That should be a phenomenal story. Roxanne Perez, has the ties now with the Judgment Day. Rhea Ripley was obviously a founding member of that group, so there's a bunch of story there that they can tell. Regarding Julia, they're already telling us that she's going to be in a program for the women's U.S. title. So I really don't see much coming out of the match tonight with Julia. I think she is just, in a bad spot, during the end of the match. Doesn't really play a role in that. With that, I also think kind of the same thing for Stephanie McCourt. I think she has a great showing in the match. Don't think she's a part of the ending of the match, but I do see a situation where she becomes the number one contender on Monday Night Raw, and takes that title off of Io Sky. That could potentially be the SummerSlam match of Stephanie McCourt versus Io Sky, because the long-term plan, which I think at WrestleMania, is Stephanie McCourt versus Rhea Ripley. I think that's a money match at WrestleMania. I see that happening this year, but we have to get to that point. But going back to the winner, so Naomi wins this match, and there's a lot of moving parts. So obviously on TV, we're seeing that friendship still exists between Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill. I think at some point here, there's going to be a breakup in that situation. And I think the match at SummerSlam is Jade versus Bianca. But Naomi obviously wins the Money in the Bank briefcase, goes on to Tiffany Stratton. Her character work has been unbelievable. And I think after years of hard work, being with the company, being a loyal soldier for them, I think Naomi's earned the right. I haven't been a huge fan of her, but I think she wins the briefcase tonight, goes into SummerSlam, challenging Tiffany Stratton. Don't know if she wins that title. I can see her, maybe she does win that title. I know that, are strapping a rock to Tiffany. Maybe she takes that title off of Tiffany at SummerSlam. They have a program moving into the fall. But who knows? But a lot of story coming out of the women's Money in the Bank match. So a lot to pay attention to. All right, guys. So up next, we have the men's Money in the Bank ladder match, which consists of Solo Sikoa versus LA Knight versus Penta versus Seth Rollins versus Andrade versus El Grande Americano. So unlike the women's match, I don't see as much story brewing in this match as the women do. The women have going on. Some story progression in this. I do see Solo Sikoa and Jacob Fatu having some kind of interaction where Fatu cost Solo Sikoa the match, because obviously we're progressing to them having some type of matchup at Night of Champions or SummerSlam for the U.S. title. So there's story there. Penta, Andrade, don't see much story there. I think they're just participants in the match. Andrade, I'm glad he's getting showcased on the show. The guy's a great professional wrestler. He should be elevated and showcased a little more. The guy can have banger after banger. Regarding LA Knight, I know there's a lot of discourse online about LA Knight winning this match. I just don't see it, man. I just don't see it. When I look at LA Knight, I see Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig. I see Razor Ramon. I see LA Knight as a guy who's extremely over, but is stuck in that upper mid-card where, he's a top guy, but a top guy that's not going to win the title. If you really look at, the landscape of the World Heavyweight Championship and the landscape of the WWE title, where does LA Knight fit in there? I really don't see a spot for him. I think he's a lifelong upper mid-card guy who's not going to win the big one. And I know there's going to be a lot of hate, for that statement because he has a big fan base. I just don't see it, and I don't see how it makes sense having him win this match. I know people are saying, oh, it's the third year in a row he has to win. He has to win. No, LA Knight does exactly what he's supposed to do. he's in a great spot. He has a great spot within this company. Don't see him winning. Don't really see much story coming out of this match. We'll see where he, goes on from this. But I don't see him winning. So that brings me to Seth Rollins. So initially, my prediction was that Seth Rollins was going to win the Money in the Bank briefcase. I had said that I thought Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed were going to lay waste to everybody in the match, and they were essentially going to hand the briefcase over to Seth Rollins. So my prediction has changed. So after seeing SmackDown last night, that's exactly what happened. Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker laid waste to the guys in the match, tonight. And Seth Rollins was standing tall over all of them. So I don't see that happening. There needs to be a force out there that stops these guys from beating everybody down. So after that, I see a situation where Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker are involved in the match, and we get Roman Reigns and CM Punk returning. If you look at CM Punk's Instagram this morning, he has a comic book picture of two wolves interacting. To me, that tells me, CM Punk, Roman Reigns. And the other reason why I changed my prediction from Seth Rollins winning was the announcement of Night of Champions. So I think we eventually get Jey Uso versus Seth Rollins, but I think that title match comes for Seth Rollins from him winning the King of the Ring in Saudi Arabia. So that's my spoiler. That's my prediction for, Night of Champions. But with that being said, listen to my prediction. I predict that El Grande Americano is going to win the Money in the Bank briefcase. Now, hear me out. Hear me out. So we've been getting a bunch of snippets and reports online that Triple H isn't a huge fan of the Money in the Bank briefcase. I think you get to the main title matches at SummerSlam without a Money in the Bank briefcase winner. So what I think happens is on Worlds Collide, I think Vikingo, I don't know if I said his name correctly, defeats Chad Gable. So what happens is that, we get the interaction between CM Punk, Roman Reigns, and Seth Rollins, Braun Breaker, Bronson Reed. They're taken out of the match. We get El Grande Americano climbs the ladder, and wins the Money in the Bank briefcase. And El Grande Americano is now out to avenge Chad Gable, who lost the Vikingo at Worlds Collide. And I think we get a title match for the AAA World Heavyweight Championship. I think that's the name of the title. I'm not 100% sure. I think we get El Grande Americano versus Vikingo for that title. That's my prediction. I think that's a swerve that nobody sees coming. The easy prediction is Seth Rollins wins the match, but I don't think he needs that to get there. I see him, winning Night of Champions, winning the King of the Ring, and moving on to Jey Uso. So El Grande Americano, here's your moment to shine. We're building a story. We want to elevate AAA. That's how you do it. You get them on a major event, El Grande Americano versus Vikingo at SummerSlam. Who knows, man? That's elevating Triple H and making them seem like, a serious part of WWE, which I think is WWE's intention. So I'm going out on a limb here. El Grande Americano is your Money in the Bank winner. All right, guys, so the final match of the night consists of John Cena and Logan Paul versus Jey Uso, the World Heavyweight Champion, and Cody Rhodes. My prediction for the match is that by hook or by crook, John Cena pins Cody Rhodes in the middle of the ring, 1, 2, 3. And I think we get more story coming out of this with Jey Uso and Logan Paul. I said a couple weeks ago, I think there's more meat on the bone with that feud. I think we get that match, that rematch at Night of Champions, where Logan Paul, faces off against Jey Uso for that title again. I think Jey Uso retains that title, establishes his, World Heavyweight Championship run, and moves further into the summer where he's squaring off against Seth Rollins. I think tonight we get a great showcase of John Cena as a heel. I think we established John Cena as the biggest heel in the business. And I think we established Cody for what he is already, the biggest babyface in the business. I think Cody Rhodes loses again. I think John Cena takes the easy way out. whether it's knocking him out with the title, John Cena with his feet on the rope, pinning him 1, 2, 3. Who knows? John Cena wins 1, 2, 3. Cody Rhodes is now on this downward, spiral where he needs to build himself back up. That's how you get sympathy for the babyface. He keeps losing time and time again till he has that breakthrough and he finds himself working his way back to the top. So tonight, Logan Paul and John Cena, they go over. I don't expect any kind of shenanigans, with any outside, people in that match. I think we get a great pro wrestling match. John Cena, by hook or by crook, pins Cody Rhodes, and that story is developing now. Cody Rhodes doesn't get a rematch, for that title because now he's 0-2 against John Cena. But eventually, I think Cody Rhodes in John Cena's last match beats him for that title, and that comes full circle. So Logan Paul, John Cena, they go over tonight, closing the show. With that, guys, that's my predictions. Let's enjoy a great day of professional wrestling. We have Worlds Collide. We have WWE Money in the Bank. And, for those of you who are UFC fans like me, we have UFC later tonight. So we have 3 great shows in a row from TKO. With that, I'm Big Rob, SlamTime Wrestle. Follow me on X at Big Rob NJ. Follow me on YouTube at, Big Rob NJ as well. And, as always, have a rocking day, guys. Take it easy.
Slam time. Wrestle talk with that.